All right, we're back here, Trevor and I, discussing academic articles. And this week, Trevor chose "What Makes a Leader" by Daniel Goleman, 1998 article that puts emotional intelligence on the map in terms of leadership. So if you've done an executive or leadership seminar or offsite where you talked about your feelings extensively, you can probably blame this article. Last week, we talked about Salovey and Mayer's 1990 "What is Emotional Intelligence" article, and that led into this. Daniel Goleman really popularized the idea of emotional intelligence with the 1995, I believe, book about it, and then this article in Harvard Business Review. So, Trevor, over to you. Like, why this article? What's important about discussing it?
Yeah, and like I said last time with the Salovey and Mayer article, like starting with the scientific research that kind of kicks everything off is instrumental to having a good understanding of what everything is. This being the one that actually took or tried to take the scientific research and put it into mainstream business is obviously the next jump that I think we should probably make and try and talk about because this is the one that really kicked it into everybody's conscious going forward. And like you said, like there's an entire industry, everything's been popularized because of the foundations that his book kind of put out there. So looking at it from the perspective of, okay, what does his contention within the article and within his book actually, how well does it align with scientific literature? And because of the fact that like this is being hotly debated all the way through today. Is it emotional intelligence? Is it not? Is it part of the big five? Is it like all of these different things that are out there? I think it's pretty interesting that I think we should go back and look at the article to kick it all off, to look at his five components for this of self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skill, and how that really maps to Salovey and Mayer's original work.
Yeah, love it. I want to pull out it really matters if this is an intelligence, which isn't super trainable, or a skill. And as you were talking just now, I was kind of thinking like it's kind of both, right? Like there are people who are logical, mathematical intelligence savants. They're doing calculus when they're five. They have mathematical intelligence. Then there are people like I think probably you and definitely me. Like I could do calculus. I learned it in school. I was able to build that skill, but I wouldn't say I'm like a savant, right? I'm not super intelligent. So there's the intelligence. Can you naturally pull in all of this emotional data, body language, tone, empathy, and intuitively make sense of it and act in ways that help you out? And then there's the social emotional skills, which are super trainable. And I think that's a lot of what he's talking about here. You can become more self aware, like just have someone point it out to you every time you're scowling or whatever it is. But I really like, he calls IQ a threshold quality. So you can't be an executive leader without sort of high IQ. Like you got to hold all of these things together. You got to see the big picture, see down the road. You got to be able to do your job well for 10 or 20 years to get into that seat uh, in the first place. But Daniel Goleman argues that emotional intelligence is the sine qua non. It took me a while, had to practice that, of leadership, meaning without it, you can't. Without emotional intelligence, you can't be a good leader. What do you think? I like you need the IQ to do it. I think we all agree it's like you have to be a certain height to play in the NBA, but past that, talent, skills, make you a good basketball player. Emotional intelligence makes you a good leader. What do you think? True,
You know,
false? So,
I love that you brought up the NBA perspective because I hadn't thought about that before. Because I was going to push back a little bit and be like, well, is IQ necessarily a threshold for
yeah,
executive leadership? Because I know lots of people that might not be the smartest in the world, right, that have made it to some really high levels, but they
yeah,
are really good at getting the team around them to do what needs to be done. And that team wants to make sure that the leader doesn't fail. So they just keep pushing that person forward, even though they might not be the brightest bulb that's out there. And you brought up the NBA And that made me think way back in the day. I don't know how many people that are listening to this are going to get it, but Muggsy Bogues, right? Muggsy Bogues was 5'3", and he's in the NBA.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
skill will actually get you, and training those things, like
Okay, okay.
you can
Well,
always.
let me just push back. You preface with way back in the day, so it's probably not the case today that Muggsy would be a great player in the NBA. You're like scientifically, like this is an N of one. I think you generally have to have the height to be in the NBA, and you generally like you don't
Yeah,
have to be brilliant for sure. I was just thinking about presidents, right? Like I don't want to get political. They're all intelligent people, right? And they're all pretty emotionally intelligent. They build great teams, cabinets around them, like Lincoln, the team of rivals, to hold all those people together. He had to be hyper emotionally intelligent, but he was a lawyer. Like he was also quite intelligent in terms of IQ. I don't know. Do we want to beat this one up more? I'm here for it.
man. I don't know if we want to beat it up. I definitely wanted. I think it needs more analysis and digging, but for a quick, short little podcast, I don't know that this is a place to really dig into it. Um, yeah, I mean, there is, whether you want to call it a true threshold capability or any of those, there are certain things that definitely enhance your ability as a to go up the ranks and to achieve the executive levels and those sorts of things. And I would also say that those threshold capabilities vary depending on what level you're trying to enter into. Like there's different threshold capabilities down at the lower level
Yeah,
than there is at the executive. We see plenty of executive leaders, even CEOs for huge corporations that come from industries that aren't even close to
yeah,
where they're leading, and they can be very successful. So, do you
yeah,
need technical competence? I'd say not necessarily, but you definitely need business competence, and you need to be able to understand and put the right team around
yeah.
you.
And maybe you need to have had technical competence at some point somewhere, probably. And Goleman argues like lower level employment, you need more cognitive skills, more technical skills, and as you grow as a leader, you start needing more and more emotional intelligence, and that's the work, right? Like a CEO isn't trying to code for Apple. The CEO is trying to build relationships outside of the company, work with shareholders, stockholders, get all of the executive team on board on different initiatives, manage change, and all of that is critical to be able to relate with people and understand where they're coming from emotionally, and meet them halfway. And I think we've talked about this quite a bit at Current Leadership, and I think the whole leadership development field talks about this. There's this huge drop off from the technical skill to leadership. And so people are like, you're great at your job, let's make you a manager. And a lot of people suck at it. And I think it's not, we always say, like, oh, well, they don't have the training, like they have to learn how to lead. I don't know. It might just be that they don't have emotional intelligence yet. And it's hard to jump into a leadership or management role without it. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely, like the higher you go, like we were talking about, emotional intelligence becomes so important, and that's where I keep coming back to as I keep digging through the literature and going through the various questions and kind of looking at stuff, like whether it is a true intelligence or not. There's definitely something behind it. Like you need to have those social skills in order to lead teams and to be effective. And there is no doubt that it does, kind of catapult you ahead of your peers if you're able to do those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I keep coming back to, I'm not sure that, you know, while Goleman is definitely onto something, I don't necessarily think that it should be called emotional intelligence. But there is definitely business application, and he's trying to take a whole bunch of things and synthesize everything together into some sort of a framework or something that's tangible that leaders in business can use.
Yeah.
One of the other interesting things that I started looking at is all of this started coming out right around the same time frame. The Big Five came out in the 90s.
Interesting.
Goleman's emotional intelligence came out in the 90s. The big five can be traced back all the way back to the late 1800s in some form or fashion, but it didn't become a big thing until the 90s. So you've got Salovey and Mayer that are kicking this off as society is changing. We're getting more knowledge workers and all this other stuff. Salovey and Mayer kick it off. Goleman makes it really, really popular. The Big Five comes out right about the same time because everybody's trying to explain this dynamic and come up with something that businesses can use.
Yeah, it was is interesting to me. I kind of, to be honest, always thought Goleman kind of just stole Salovey and Mayer's work and ran with it, made it popular, and that is frankly unfair. I didn't do the research, but in this article, he talks a little bit about how he came up with this idea of emotional intelligence being important for leaders. And what he did was he looked at 188 different competency models from IO psychology departments in large corporations. IO psychology, that's what they do. So they look at psychometrics and how do we hire the right people? Like, how do we get the talent that we need to do the job? He's looking at all of those, and that's where he came up with these cognitive skills, the technical skills, and the emotional intelligence skills of, like relating with people, empathizing, communicating on an emotional level, like all these things that IO psychologists were looking at in order to hire people. And it is really interesting to think about like trailer and kind of the management. People are cogs in a machine, and if you get the machine right, then you get the right outcome. Shift to like, actually we have to be way more adaptive and dynamic, especially as like, especially right now robots can do a lot of this stuff, right? Like AI can do a lot of this stuff. A friend sent an article about how doctorates are useless, and like if you're considering getting an MD right now, AI is going to outstrip the need for MDs by the time you get one because it takes so long, to become a resident. I was like, oh shoot, I got to hurry up and get my PhD, I guess. But yeah, it's like you're right. It's become more and more important as adaptive leadership has become more important, and technical skills have maybe become less important. What do you think? I put a bunch on the table there. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure that I would say technical skills have become less important. We're looking at society has shifted drastically. Like if you look back to 1955, I think it was Robert Katz. He had his kind of threshold stuff that he was talking about as well for leaders in organizations, with technical skills, conceptual skills, and then he actually termed it human skills. Right, human skills. They're already talking basically emotional intelligence type stuff back in 55, but we didn't really translate it until 90s with Salovey and
yeah,
Mayer. Um, and then everybody kind of puts their own little spin on it. Like the Center for Creative Leadership has some different ones that are in there. But again, and it's not a bad thing. It's just we're going to constantly evolve from a leadership perspective, just like society is going to evolve in business, you name it, right? We're all going to have to get different frameworks, and what we understand today is not necessarily going to be what we understand tomorrow because maybe we have better measurement techniques or those sorts of things as we go forward. Um, just the dynamic with people themselves and our interactions and the way that we've got, what do they say at this point in time? We can have up to like four or five different generations working, at the
yeah,
same time. Right, that is absolutely like I don't think we've ever had that much of diversity in a workforce before, which makes emotional intelligence or the concept for applying these social skills that much more important. Because if you can't recognize and apply your leadership style or even just your interpersonal communication style with everybody that's there, like you're not going to be effective. You're not going to be able to span boundaries. You're not going to be able to get people together and moving towards the same goals. I mean, it's just a
yeah.
different world.
That totally makes sense. And when we talk about communication, we talk about kind of transmitting a channel with noise and then receiving, and that channel is just chock full of emotions, right? Like I say things in a tone that's unhelpful, and I might be thinking about how I got cut off in traffic, but you're thinking like, oh, Knight's mad at me. Um, and it wildly throws communication off without the intelligence, the emotional intelligence to decipher that and say like, oh, maybe something else is going on. Maybe I can set that aside, regulate my angry reaction to that, and ask like, what's going on? You sound angry. All these skills hyper important to get everyone on the same page.
And that's the, you and I were talking about last time, the the temporal aspect of this, where maybe it is an intelligence, right? Because like some people are able to do like as you're doing the training, some people going through training, it's going to take them a while, lots of reps, lots of practice, trying to figure out how to do this. And other people, it's just going to be innate, like they know, hey, immediately I can recognize these sorts of facial expressions or this body language or whatever the tone that's coming out, and they can adapt right off the bat
Yeah.
from there. Um,
And it's not like a there's no cognitive intervention, I believe, in a truly emotionally intelligent person, right? Like they see the tone or see the facial expression and their gut tells them like this person's sad and they immediately show compassion, kindness, whatever that is called for in the situation. It's not like a for me, I see it and I'm like, oh, like they seem sad. I'm thinking this in my mind, like I should probably like ask what's going on or show that I care, and then I do, and that's fine, like that's good. But a truly emotionally intelligent person would just intuit that that needs to happen to do it with no cognitive intervention. I think.
yeah, and it makes it's super interesting because when I haven't looked at this yet, but it just popped into my head. Does a quote unquote emotionally intelligent individual that can just perceive these things and know what needs to happen, is emotional intelligence in that respect, like how does that play in cultures or societies that have different mannerisms, right? In some of the Asian cultures, like smiling is nervousness. It's not, hey, I agree with you and this is good. It's, I don't really know what's going on. So
Yeah.
if somebody sees that, right, they're going to intuit something different based on their cultural upbringing,
See,
unless they.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think a truly emotionally intelligent person would see past that. Like there would be tells in because smiling is also happiness in those
Mhm.
cultures, and I think like for us, we might read it and cognitively process and say, oh, like they're smiling, they must be happy. Like high five, move on. Where there are going to be other tells, like there's going to be a wrinkle in the eye or whatever. The shoulders are going to be a little bit slouched. Whatever it is, someone who's truly emotionally intelligent is going to be pulling in that data that we don't even see. But we don't have a chance unless we train to it, and learn in this culture this is what this might mean. And here's what to look for, and you build that skill. But it's back to like mathematical intelligence, like or verbal intelligence, right? Like there are 12-year-olds who can write way better poems than I can, just naturally. I can learn how to write a poem and do it well. I can practice and build that skill. It doesn't mean I'm verbally intelligent. It just means that I've worked hard to build the skill, which is great news, right? Like either way, if you're naturally emotionally intelligent, it's going to help you be a leader. If you work hard and work on these domains of self-awareness and regulation and motivation and empathy and social skills, it's also going to help you be a good leader. So there's some semantic aspect. It's just a shortcut if you have that intelligence, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, and that's what I was really getting to a little bit earlier in the discussion, where I'm not necessarily sold on Goleman's terminology for emotional
Yeah.
intelligence. Like again, to level set everybody, I think when you get into a discussion, um, I think the participants in the discussion, it's absolutely vital to know what that word means in the context that they're using, whether it's uh, I would say completely known by every industry and everybody across the world. Doesn't necessarily need to be, as long as that group that's actually working on it understands what the context is and what those words mean to them. Which goes back to like, is what he's saying invalid? Absolutely not. He's definitely keyed in on some really good stuff.
Yeah.
Um, it's just, and if you look at the emotional intelligence literature as we're going forward, like it's still evolving today. Salovey and Mayer, they started out with three different components for emotional intelligence, and their model even changed to four. So
Yeah.
the more we get into this, and the more we have interactions, and we're doing the training, and the workplace changes, we're going to continue to evolve this thing. So what, like I said earlier, what we understand it to be today, and this was Goleman's model back in what was it? He
98.
published a book in 90. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
The article was 98. The book was like
I think
95, 96,
95.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I'm sure if you talk to him, based on all his research today, it's going to have changed a little.
Yeah. There's a great podcast, first person plural, that he does with other people about this. And there's an emotional intelligence consortium. I mean, it sounds so official to say we should start a consortium. One
Right?
thing I want to pull out because we're getting short on time here, and it's relevant to past conversations like self-aware, self-regulation, empathy, social skills all make a ton of sense. But right in the middle, he has motivation. I don't know. That's weird. I think emotions are huge in motivation, right? Like if you're happy doing what you're doing, then you're going to be more motivated. But he really keys in on like this need for achievement or drive, and talks about it as intrinsic motivation. I don't think that's right. Like intrinsic motivation for me is different. Drive and a need for achievement. Like I want to get my PhD. It is not intrinsically motivating 100% of the time to do that, right? I want to get it because it's important for my career, because people take us more seriously, because I learn a lot about different leadership topics and how to research them. It's not like an intrinsic motivation thing. So, yeah, what do you think? Motivation, is it supposed to be there? Um, why is it there?
I actually had to go back and look because the way that it was presented again in his version, I'm kind of like you. I don't necessarily like we've got motivational theory, we've got a whole bunch of other things that are already capture this. So does it really need to be tossed in there? And when I went back and looked at Salovey and Mayer's original framework, like motivation is underneath utilization of emotion. So I'm like, well, okay, so since both of them mention it in there, is it a valid construct? And am I missing something that it needs to be put in and is um, but again, I'm still not 100% sold that we should have it as a like if we have motivation psychology and all these motivation theory, you name it, that's out there,
Yeah,
do we have it as a subcomponent of emotional intelligence? And I don't, I'm still trying to work through that process of if we put it in that category, what's the additional benefit that an emotional intelligence look at motivation gives that the other ones don't? And I haven't
yeah,
necessarily found that the emotional intelligence look at it gives us anything different than motivation theory does. And it might actually take away because it doesn't recognize, uh, grit, persistence, determination. Like none of that stuff is captured within the emotional intelligence side of the house for motivation, which is another one that why I'm not necessarily sold that it does anything that the other ones don't already capture. But I'm sure there's some research out there somewhere that'll show me. I just haven't come across it yet.
it seems it's akin to me to saying trust is emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
right? Like, are emotions important in building trust? Like, 100%, they're critical. But it's not the same. Like, are they important to build motivation or even regulate? Like, there are times when you lose and it's hard and it's sad and you feel defeated. You have all kinds of emotions. And if you can't regulate those, you're not going to be motivated to keep pushing. But that doesn't make it emotional intelligence. It means that they're important in motivation. So maybe it's just like a Venn diagram gray area. But it is interesting that both of our articles have put motivation in there.
Yeah, and I think the Salovey and Mir article, um, they look at motivation more from a mood perspective. So again, this is another one of those that words mean things. So emotion being the first thing that kicks up, some sort of a physiological change, and then you label that with a feeling, and then persistent feelings translate to moods. And that's where you can really use motivation with the mood of, the collective of all of this stuff. So that's how
Yeah.
they use it versus the way that Goleman uses it. Again, different. I think as long as, and it comes back to as long as the group understands what you're talking about,
Yeah.
that's going to be the biggest thing. So every discussion you have, you got to do that level set with terminology, and then you can move forward. But right now, we've got motivation in three different contexts, trying
Yeah.
to be related to the exact same term, and I don't like the way that that's kind of lined out. It doesn't sit well with me.
Doesn't sit. I don't like it. I feel bad about it. Um, all right, we're coming up at time. One key takeaway from this conversation for me, I've always thought of like we have to figure out, is emotional intelligence intelligence or is it social emotional skills? And this today, I think I've separated those two. Like they're just two separate, adjacent things, right? Like there are people who are emotionally intelligent; they can perceive and use emotional data naturally very, very well. They're talented at it, and there are people who just need to build those skills. Like, give me a checklist, show me what I need to do to show that I care. I'll learn how to do it. I'll get better at it. And it's okay for them to be two separate things: social emotional skills, emotional intelligence, and they kind of merge together somewhere in the middle. So I'm taking that away. What are you taking away today?
Yeah, definitely 100% agree with you. Two separate things, but not but. And my other big thing is like training is not necessarily development. We can train on emotional intelligence all day, but if you don't apply it, you're not really developing emotional intelligence. So it just gets to back to that thing of even if it and it gets back to even if it is a true intelligence where some people are inherently better at it, like there's been studies that have shown that you can very small incrementally get better at very things that you train that you develop over the years through experience, through training, those sorts of things. And in that respect, even somebody that is not like peak operating emotional intelligence, as long as they do the training and they apply it, um, I still think that you can develop emotional intelligence in that context.
I'd push back and say develop social emotional skills. But I love the distinction and the optimism. One of our guides, Mike Jones, says there are lessons learned and there are lessons identified. And often people um, mistake the identified lessons as learned lessons. So it takes the work and the practice, like you say, to make it happen. Um, awesome. I appreciate you picking this article. It was fascinating to read and think about on a deeper level and enjoyed the conversation. Thanks, Trevor.
That was a great one.